The colony of Elysium Prime had always been peaceful. Floating cities drifted over golden oceans, and children played under twin suns that never set. It was one of humanity's most beautiful worlds, the shining example of what peace among the stars could be. But peace never lasts forever. At 0300 local time, the sky burned. Without warning, over 100 Galactic Union warships dropped out of hyperspace, their drives tearing open the calm night with blinding light. They came in silence, without transmission, without diplomacy. Within seconds, the bombardment began. Elysium's defense grid barely had time to activate before the first plasma lances fell. Towers melted. Oceans boiled. Entire cities vanished beneath pillars of white fire. The colony's planetary shield held for only 37 minutes. When it failed, so did hope. From orbit, Admiral Corvin of the Galactic Dominion fleet watched the destruction unfold. His blue-scaled hands gripped the edge of his command chair as explosions danced across the surface. "Status," he demanded. "Human resistance eliminated, Admiral," replied his officer. "No survivors detected?" Corvin nodded coldly. "Let this be a warning to the Terran Republic. Their expansion ends here." He turned away from the screen, unaware that a single transmission had escaped the chaos. A desperate message, a cry for help. "This is Elysium Prime, under attack. Thousands dead. Please, anyone, help us." Then silence. 4 days later, in the deep black between stars, a Terran listening post caught the faint signal. The young operator on duty almost ignored it. Static from some dying satellite, he thought. But when he cleaned the feed, the voice came through clearly. The moment he heard Elysium Prime, he froze. He forwarded it straight to Earth Command. Hours later, in the underground halls of the Terran Defense Council, the message played on loop. The room was silent when it ended. Only the hum of distant machinery filled the air. Finally, High Admiral Marcus Kane stood. His face was grim, carved with years of command. "How many?" he asked quietly. The intelligence officer swallowed hard. "Over 12 million, sir." "The entire colony is gone." Kane looked around the table. Admirals, generals, presidents. "Who did it?" "The Galactic Union, sir. Specifically, the Galactic Dominion. They're calling it a preemptive strike to stop human military growth." Kane's hands tightened into fists. "Preemptive," he repeated. "They killed 12 million civilians and called it strategy." Across from him, an older woman, Admiral Reva Holt, commander of the Terran Navy's Black Projects, leaned forward. "We warned them years ago, Marcus. They thought humanity was still weak, that we'd forgotten how to fight." She opened a secure file on the table. The hologram that appeared was staggering. Rows upon rows of dreadnoughts, hidden in deep space shipyards beyond the galactic rim. 500,000 of them, each one built in secret. Each one silent, waiting. Kane looked at her in shock. "You finished Project Nemesis?" Reva nodded. 5 years ago. I told the Council we'd need it one day. Now we do." He stared at the projection. Vast fleets sleeping under the shadows of dead stars. 500,000 warships. Her voice was calm, cold. Enough to erase a galactic fleet from existence. Across Earth, the mood shifted from grief to fury. The footage of Elysium's last moments flooded every network. The galaxy had always seen humanity as the newcomers, fragile, emotional, too compassionate to wage real war. But when humans mourn, they also remember. And when they remember, they act. Factories reactivated. Orbital docks filled with activity. Old veterans re-enlisted. And from the shadows of space, the Terran Armada began to awaken. Every citizen knew what came next. Not peace, not negotiation, retribution. On the distant world of Elysium Prime, Admiral Corvin sat in his palace watching the human news channels through intercepted feeds. "Pathetic," he muttered. "They grieve, they weep. They'll never fight us. Not now." He sipped his drink and looked toward the night sky, unaware that in those same stars the void was beginning to move. Back on Earth, High Admiral Kane stood before the Council one final time. "They burned one of our worlds," he said. "They thought we would forget. But humanity doesn't forget. We don't forgive." He pressed his hand against the activation panel. Across the galaxy, in dark space, hundreds of dormant ships came to life. Engines roared. Lights flared. The walls shook as the holographic map filled with Terran signatures. 1, then 10, then hundreds of thousands. Kane looked out at them with cold fury. They wanted to see our strength? Then let them look to the stars. The message went out to every system, every soldier, every ship, for Elysium. And as the fleets began to move, the galaxy trembled. Aboard the TSS Vanguard, the first dreadnought of the Armada, Captain Alara Ward stood at the command deck. Her voice steady. "All ships confirmed," she said. 500,000 vessels ready for deployment," Kane's voice came through the comms. "You know your orders." She smiled faintly. "Yes, sir. We're going hunting." The stars ahead flared bright as the fleet prepared to jump, and when the jump gates opened, the void filled with fire. Humanity's answer had arrived. The stars shuddered as the Terran Armada moved. 500,000 dreadnoughts, black steel and burning light, emerged from the void. They did not fly in formation. They moved like a storm. Each ship carried the name of a fallen colony. Each hull bore the scars of past wars humanity had survived. And every soul aboard carried the same vow. Elysium will be avenged. At the heart of the fleet, the TSS Vanguard led the charge. Captain Alara Ward stood on the command deck, watching as one by one, the ships of the Armada blinked into existence. "Fleet synchronization complete," her officer reported. "Confirming all battle groups online. Sector 1 through 12 ready for orders." Alara nodded. "Patch me through to Earth Command." The holographic form of High Admiral Marcus Kane appeared, his expression calm but carved with fury. "Captain Ward," he said, "you know your orders. The Dominion destroyed Elysium. We destroy their fleets. All of them." Alara straightened. "Yes, sir." "No quarter." Kane's gaze hardened. "No quarter." No hesitation. The channel cut. The room went quiet. Then Alara turned to her bridge crew. "You heard the Admiral. Set course for Zalari Prime. Full jump. Let the galaxy know. Humanity doesn't forget." A hum filled the ship as the Dreadnought's engines powered up. The jump drives began to glow a fierce blue, matching the fire in her eyes. Across the Dominion frontier, alarms erupted. Zalari command stations picked up thousands of warp signatures entering their territory, then tens of thousands more. At first, they thought it was a system glitch. No fleet that large could exist, but the readings held one by one. Entire constellations went dark as Terran dreadnoughts poured through hyperspace corridors. In every direction, human ships emerged like avenging ghosts. No banners, no warnings, only purpose. On the Dominion capital, Admiral Corvin watched his tactical screens flicker with disbelief. 500,000 ships? That's impossible, he barked. The Zalari war officer hesitated. "Our scans confirm it, my lord. It's the Terrans. They've unleashed their entire navy." Corvin slammed a clawed hand on the table. "No, the Terrans never had this power." The officer swallowed. "Perhaps they were hiding it." Corvin's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll crush them as we did their colonies." But even as he spoke, reports flooded in. Entire fleets, the proudest in the Dominion, were already gone. The Terrans didn't announce. Themselves, they didn't negotiate, they simply arrived and began to erase. At the Battle of Varine's Reach, a Dominion defense fleet of 8,000 ships formed a wall across the sector. When the Terrans arrived, their numbers blotted out the stars. The Dominion commander, panicking, sent a transmission. "Terrans, cease your approach. This is neutral territory." The only reply came in the form of a voice that echoed across every channel. "Calm, cold, human. There are no neutrals after Elysium." And then the Terran dreadnoughts opened fire. The first volley erased half the enemy fleet. The second shattered the rest. The human cannons didn't fire plasma or simple beams. They fired condensed solar cores, fragments of stars weaponized through Project Nemesis. The weapons burned hotter than suns, tearing through shields and hulls alike. Within 15 minutes, Varine's reach was gone. News of the slaughter spread fast. The galaxy had seen human anger before, but never like this. In the bars of outer colonies, smugglers and mercenaries whispered, "They unleashed the Dreadnoughts." 500,000 of them. On the worlds of the Galactic Union, panic spread. Civilizations that had ignored Elysium's cries now watched in horror as the Terran fleets advanced. The humans weren't just winning, they were erasing. Back aboard the Vanguard, Captain Ilara received the latest reports. 3 Dominion systems neutralized, her officer said. Enemy resistance collapsing. Ilara nodded, her face expressionless. And the civilians? Evacuated mostly. But some of their colonies... He hesitated. They refused to surrender. Ilara's jaw tightened. Then we evacuate the innocent, destroy the rest. Her crew exchanged glances. None dared question her, because they had all seen the footage of Elysium. They all remembered the screams. Meanwhile, on Earth, High Admiral Kane stood before the Terran Council once more. His voice was steady, almost mechanical. We warned them. They didn't listen. Now we show them what that mistake costs. Some of the counselors looked uneasy. Admiral, there are reports of mass destruction. Entire planets gone. The galaxy is calling us executioners. Kane turned his gaze toward them. We are not executioners, he said. We are the memory of Elysium. 3 weeks later, the Dominion's final stronghold came into view, Zalari Prime itself. The Terran Armada arrived in full force, surrounding the planet from orbit. Captain Ilara stood on her bridge, watching the world that had once mocked humanity. So this is where it ends, she said quietly. Her second officer asked. Orders, Captain? Ilara looked out at the blue-green planet below. She could see the same oceans that once reminded her of. Home. Then she gave the order for... Elysium, fire! The Dreadnoughts obeyed. 500,000 warships unleashed their fury in one synchronized blast. It wasn't war. It was judgment. From the surface, the Zalari saw the sky turn white. From orbit, the humans saw a planet disappear. When the light faded, there was no Zalari Prime, only dust. Ilara exhaled slowly. It's done, her officer whispered. The galaxy will never forget this. She nodded. Good. They shouldn't. Her voice hardened. Let them remember what happens when you burn a human world. Across the galaxy, silence fell. Every empire, every council, every race knew now. Humanity was not a species to provoke. They were a force of nature, and in the cold dark of space, their message echoed once more. You burned one world. We burned an empire. The galaxy was quiet. Too quiet. After the fall of Zalari Prime, not a single empire dared to move. The news of the planet's destruction had spread faster than light itself. Every world, every race, every ruler whispered the same words. The humans did it. And so, the stars went silent. In the aftermath, humanity stood at the center of the storm it had created. Across the void, the Terran Armada held its position, a wall of metal and fire orbiting the ruins of the Dominion's homeworld. On the TSS Vanguard, Captain Ilara Ward watched the debris fields drift below. The once mighty Dominion was nothing but ash now. Her first officer broke the silence. Ma'am, there are no remaining Zalari signals. The planet's surface is uninhabitable. Ilara gave a slow nod. Understood. Begin recovery operations. Retrieve our scouts. No one stays behind. She looked out at the glowing remnants of the destroyed world, her expression unreadable. War's over, she whispered. But peace feels hollow. Back on Earth? In the underground command bunker of Terran Defense Headquarters, High Admiral Marcus Kane stood before the council again. A long silence filled the room before one of the leaders finally spoke. The Dominion has fallen. The galaxy trembles. You've won, Admiral. Humanity has peace. Kane's eyes, however, were distant.
Peace?
He repeated. No, what we have is fear. The room shifted uncomfortably. Kane turned toward the galactic map hovering above the table. Entire sectors were marked as Terran-controlled. Every empire out there is watching us. Not as allies, not as friends. as a threat. They'll either bow, or they'll prepare for the day we fall. In the neutral territories, those words were already becoming true. The Kalari, Voln, Dravari, and dozens of smaller species convened in secret. They called it the Council of Shadows. In a dim-lit chamber floating above a dying star, alien leaders gathered. The Kalari Chancellor hissed softly, "If we don't act, humanity will rule the stars." They destroyed an empire without mercy. What happens when they turn on us? The Voln ambassador, a creature of mist and light, flickered uneasily. Perhaps we can reason with them. They acted out of vengeance, not conquest. The Dravari general slammed his clawed hand on the table. Vengeance or not, 500,000 dreadnoughts cannot be ignored. If they decide to expand, none of us will survive. The Kalari Chancellor leaned forward. Then we prepare. Quietly. Patiently. We will not strike them now, but we will not be helpless when they strike us. The others agreed. And thus, in the dark, a new alliance was born. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of Terran space, the Armada was returning home. Fleet after fleet jumped through the void, their engines lighting up the darkness. To the colonies watching from their worlds, it was the most magnificent sight ever seen. Humanity's strength united, unmatched. But among the soldiers, the mood was heavy. They had avenged Elysium. But victory came at a cost few could see. In the mess hall of the Vanguard, Lieutenant Hale sat across from a silent crew. The glow of the stars outside reflected on their tired faces. Finally, someone spoke. "We did it, right?" "We won." Hale didn't answer at first. Then softly he said, "Did we?" "We lost Elysium. Then we lost Mercy. What's left after that?" No one replied. Aboard the TSS Vanguard, Captain Alara received a private transmission, Priority 1 from Admiral Kane himself. She accepted the hologram. Kane appeared, his face more worn than before. "Alara," he said, "the Council is discussing disarmament. They think if we show weakness, the galaxy will calm down?" Alara frowned. "And you?" He shook his head. "I've seen what happens when humanity trusts the galaxy. We can't afford weakness. Not again." She stared at him for a moment. "You're afraid, sir?" Kane met her gaze. "Not for myself, for us, for what we've become." The channel went dark. Weeks passed. The Terran Armada began to demobilize, but many ships remained stationed across neutral borders. Humanity now held territory larger than any other power in known space, and though no one dared to challenge them, whispers grew. Rumors of the Terran ghost fleets, hidden battle groups still lurking beyond the galactic rim, waiting for the next order. Rumors of Project Requiem, a weapon built after the Dreadnoughts, one that didn't just destroy planets, but erased them from history. No one knew if it was true. No one wanted to find out. On one quiet night aboard the Vanguard, Captain Alara stood alone on the observation deck, staring at the stars. Her second officer approached. "Captain, command requests your report." "What should I tell them?" Alara didn't turn around. "Tell them." She paused, her voice low. "The galaxy's gone silent." "Peace?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, not peace. Fear." The officer hesitated. "And what about us?" Alara finally turned, her eyes hard but weary. "We are the fire that burned too bright, and the galaxy is still blinded by it." She looked out at the stars once more. "They'll never forgive us, but they'll never forget us either." Far away, in a forgotten corner of the void, a faint signal flickered, weak, broken, but unmistakably Zalari. A voice distorted by distance whispered through static, "This isn't over!" And then the signal was gone. The silence of the galaxy had begun to crack. The galaxy's silence didn't last long. In the shadows, whispers turned into plans. And plans became war. The destruction of Zalari Prime had left a scar across every star system. To most, humanity's victory was proof of their unmatched strength. But to others, it was a warning that the galaxy's balance was broken. Within a month of Elysium's vengeance, the secret Council of Shadows met again. Hidden deep inside the asteroid fortress of Rathis Core, leaders from 12 alien races gathered around a dim, flickering holographic table. The Kalari Chancellor, Her skin reflecting violet light spoke first. "We can't wait any longer. The humans have occupied half the Orion Arm. Their fleets patrol systems that don't even belong to them." The Dravari general, his armor gleaming black, growled. "And who will challenge them? Their dreadnoughts outnumber all our ships combined. A direct fight is suicide." The Voln emissary, shimmering like smoke, interjected softly. "Then we don't fight them directly. We break them from within." The room grew silent. The Voln continued. "Humanity may be strong, but strength makes one proud, and pride blinds. If we can sow division within their command, turn their strength against itself, we can end this without another war." The Chancellor's eyes narrowed. "You speak of infiltration." "Yes," the Voln replied. "Of whispers instead of weapons, of fear instead of fleets." And so it began. Back on Earth, the Terran Council was fracturing. The destruction of the Zalari Dominion had made humanity untouchable, but it also made them divided. In the grand chambers of New Geneva, political leaders argued endlessly. Some demanded disarmament. Others called for expansion. "The galaxy is watching us in terror," shouted one counselor. "If we keep these fleets armed, we'll look like tyrants." Another countered sharply. "They are afraid." "Good! Let them be. It's the only reason they won't attack again." In the center of the room, High Admiral Marcus Kane listened in silence. He'd seen this before. Humanity winning the war but losing itself afterward. When the meeting ended, Admiral Reva Holt approached him quietly. "Politics," she said bitterly. "We finally stand as equals among the stars, and they want to tear it all down." Kane sighed. "That's what fear does. Even our own people feel it now." Reva frowned. "Something's worse than fear, Marcus. Division. And it's spreading fast." He didn't know how right she was. Across the Terran fleet, small incidents began to occur, encrypted messages that shouldn't exist, conflicting orders between admirals, missions sabotaged by communication errors. At first, no one paid attention. But then 3 dreadnoughts went missing in deep space. Captain Ilara Ward, commanding the TSS Vanguard, was the first to notice a pattern. She called her intelligence officer. "Run cross-checks on these reports. The lost ships, the system outages, everything. It's too coordinated." Hours later, the officer returned pale and shaken. "Captain, I found something. The missing ships all received orders from Earth Command. But those orders were faked." Ilara froze. "By who?" He hesitated. "The encryption signature, it's Terran, but altered. Someone's mimicking command." Ilara's voice turned cold. "Someone inside?" The officer nodded slowly. "Or someone pretending to be." In the depths of space, beyond Terran borders, a shadow fleet was forming. The Council of Shadows had created something new. A coalition army forged from survivors of the Dominion, rogue mercenaries, and exiled engineers. They called it the Phantom Armada. It had no planets, no flag, and no mercy. Every ship was cloaked, every captain sworn to one cause: destroy humanity before humanity destroyed the stars. At its head stood Varnak of Zalari, one of the few Dominion officers who had escaped the destruction of his homeworld. He stood before a massive projection of Sul, humanity's heart. "They think we're gone," he said to his assembled captains, "but ghosts can still haunt the living. And soon, the Terrans will remember what fear feels like." On Earth, Kane stared at the latest reports from the frontiers. Unknown ships raiding Terran outposts, communications cut off, colonies vanishing. At first, he thought it was rebellion. Then the patterns clicked. "This isn't chaos," he muttered. "It's coordination." Reva Holt looked over his shoulder. "The Council of Shadows." He nodded grimly. "Has to be. They've learned from us. They're using our tactics. Strike fast, vanish faster." Reva clenched her fists. "Then we need to remind them who taught those tactics." Kane stood and turned to his officers. "Alert all fleet sectors. The galaxy thinks humanity is divided. Let's prove them wrong." On the Vanguard, Ilara received the order. "New mission, Captain," came Kane's voice through the transmission. "Track the Phantom Armada. No diplomacy, no hesitation." Ilara's eyes hardened. "Understood, Admiral. For Elysium?" Kane's voice grew quieter. "For humanity," the transmission ended. Ilara turned to her crew. "Prepare for silent pursuit. No signals, no lights. We hunt shadows with shadows." The Vanguard's engines dimmed as it drifted into deep space, cloaking itself from all detection. In the blackness, a voice from the crew whispered softly, "War never ends, does it?" Ilara didn't answer. She just stared into the void ahead, where the stars seemed to move unnaturally, as if something massive was waiting just beyond sight. Far ahead, in the emptiness between galaxies, the Phantom Armada stirred. Their scanners caught a faint Terran signature closing in. Varnak smiled. "So, they've come." He turned to his officers. "Good. Let them find us. The humans brought fire to our worlds. Now we'll bring darkness to theirs." The void shimmered as the cloaked ships powered up. The hunters had become the hunted. And humanity was about to learn. Vengeance always breeds more vengeance. The void between galaxies was silent, endless, and black. It was a place where no light dared travel, no trade lanes, no signals, no hope, and it was here that humanity's greatest warship hunted the unknown. The TSS Vanguard moved like a ghost through the darkness. Its hull lights were off, engines dimmed, every transmission silenced. 500 crew members waited in tense quiet, their eyes fixed on scanners that saw nothing. Captain Ilara Ward stood. At the center of the bridge, hands clasped behind her back. Her gaze didn't move from the forward viewport, where only distant stars glimmered faintly. Her first officer spoke softly. "Still no sign of them, Captain. If the Phantom Armada's out here, they're buried deep." Ilara nodded slowly. "They're out here. The question is, do they know we are too?" The crew didn't answer. They all knew what was at stake. The Phantom Armada wasn't just a rumor anymore. It had destroyed 3 Terran outposts in 2 weeks. Each attack was precise, surgical, and left no survivors. Whoever led them knew human tactics inside out. Hours turned into days. Then one night cycle, the silence broke. "Captain," the sensor officer whispered, "I've got something. Faint gravitic distortion, bearing 97 Mark II. Distance, 50,000 clicks." Ilara's voice was calm. "Confirm." The officer adjusted the readings. The distortion grew clearer, something huge moving slowly, cloaked. She straightened. "They're here." The bridge lights dimmed automatically as battle stations activated. "Bring weapons online," Ilara ordered. "Minimal power. No emissions." The crew obeyed in silence. Through the black, the Vanguard scanners locked onto faint signatures. Dozens, then hundreds, an entire fleet, the Phantom Armada, on. The largest of the shadow ships, Varnak of Zalari, watched his tactical screen flicker. A faint Terran energy signature had appeared at the edge of his fleet's cloak field. He smiled coldly. "So, they found us." His aide hissed nervously. "Should we engage, my lord?" Varnak's scales shimmered in the darkness. "No, let them come closer. The humans love their pride. They think they can fight in the dark. Let's see how long their light lasts." Back aboard the Vanguard, the tension was suffocating. Ilara leaned over the command console. "Mark their positions. I want every ship mapped before we strike." Her second officer frowned. "Captain, that's hundreds of targets. If we get detected—" She cut him off. "We don't miss." Minutes turned into hours as her crew gathered data. The Phantom Armada was enormous. Not as large as the Terran fleet, but more dangerous in one way. It was invisible. Ilara's mind raced. How do you fight an enemy you can't see? Then it came to her. She tapped her comms. "Engineering, prepare to deploy solar flares. Pattern Theta." The chief engineer's voice crackled through. "Ma'am, those are high-energy light bombs. You'll expose us too." "I know," she said. "But so will they." At Alara's command, the Vanguard launched a series of small metallic spheres into the void. They drifted silently through space, scattering among the stars. Then, one by one, they ignited. Blinding artificial suns flared across the darkness, painting the void in brilliant gold. And for the first time, the Phantom Armada was revealed. Dozens of ships, alien, hybrid, stolen, gleamed in the new light, caught mid-cloak. "Target lock confirmed," shouted the gunnery officer. "Fire!" The Vanguard's dread cannons roared to life. Blue-white lances of plasma shot across the void, striking the nearest enemy ships. Explosions lit the black, each brighter than the last. The silent hunt had become a storm. On his flagship, Varnak's smile vanished as alarms blared. "Shields collapsing! They found us!" Varnak snarled. "So be it! Power up the cloak counterfields! Activate the pulse mines!" In moments, the Phantom Armada responded with blinding aggression. Dark energy flares erupted from their ships, distorting sensors and shattering Terran targeting locks. On the Vanguard, systems flickered as interference flooded the deck. "Shields down to 60%, shouted the engineer. Alara gritted her teeth. "Reroute power to forward arrays. Fire blind if you have to. I want them gone." The Dreadnought fired again and again, the recoil shaking the entire ship. But the enemy was fast, darting between shadows, returning fire with weapons that tore through space itself. The battle became chaos. In the chaos, the Vanguard's comms officer gasped. "Incoming transmission! It's human!" Alara turned sharply. "What?" The officer played it. A distorted voice echoed through the bridge, broken by static. "Alara Ward, you shouldn't have come." Her blood went cold. "That voice," the message continued, "the Phantom Armada isn't what you think. You're not hunting aliens. You're hunting us." The crew froze. Alara whispered, "Us?" Then the channel cut. Moments later, a massive explosion rocked the Vanguard. The ship spun violently as alarms screamed. "Engine hit!" yelled the engineer. "We've lost main propulsion." Through the viewport, Alara saw one of the enemy ships break formation, and she saw its hull markings clearly for the first time. Terran lettering, Terran design, a dreadnought. Her dreadnought. The color drained from her face. No. The truth hit her like a shockwave. The Phantom Armada wasn't just alien survivors. It was Terran defectors, humans who had turned against their own, taking captured ships with them. The enemy wasn't out there. It was them. "Captain!" her officer shouted. "They're hailing us again." Alara clenched her fists. "Put it through." The screen flickered to reveal a man's face, scarred, cold, and human. "Hello, Captain Ward," he said softly. "Do you remember me?" Her breath caught. "Admiral Varric," he smiled faintly. "You left us to die at Elysium. We survived. We saw what your vengeance did, and now we'll show you what it created." Then the transmission ended, and 100 stolen Terran dreadnoughts turned toward the Vanguard. Alara stood tall, her eyes hard as steel. "So that's it," she whispered. "The ghosts we made." Her crew looked to her for orders. "Captain?" Alara raised her hand slowly, voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Then let's remind them who we are." The Vanguard's guns came alive once more. Light and shadow collided in the black, and humanity's greatest battle began anew, this time against itself. The stars around them burned with the light of battle. Terran fire met Terran steel. Humanity, once united in vengeance, was now tearing itself apart. The TSS Vanguard drifted through the wreckage of the fight. Smoke filled its corridors, alarms echoed through the decks, and emergency lights bathed everything in red. Captain Alara Ward stood in the center of the bridge, her uniform torn, her expression unreadable. Her crew worked in silence, bruised, exhausted, terrified. They'd just fought other humans. Ilara's voice was calm but heavy. "Damage report," her engineer replied through a haze of static. "Shields gone. Starboard engine offline. We've lost half our secondary batteries. Casualties, 48. Ilara closed her eyes for a moment. Every name she heard was another weight on her soul. Then she spoke again, her tone steady. "Any sign of the Phantom Armada?" Her first officer looked up from his console. They pulled back. "We're reading a warp trail. They're retreating deeper into the void," Ilara nodded. "They'll be back. They always come back." Deep in the void, the Phantom Armada regrouped around its leader, Admiral Varric, once a decorated Terran commander. He watched the battle footage on his holoscreen. His ships had taken losses, but the message was sent. "The Vanguard still lives," said his lieutenant. "Should we pursue?" Varric shook his head. "Not yet. They need to understand first." He zoomed in on the wreckage of Elysium, the colony humanity had lost. "We all saw what vengeance does," he said softly. "Now they'll see what it costs." His eyes hardened. "They made me a monster, so I'll give them one." Back aboard the Vanguard, Ilara sat in her quarters, staring at the message that had shaken her to the core. "You left us to die at Elysium?" Those words burned more than any laser strike. She remembered the day Elysium fell, how her ship had been too far away to help, how command ordered her not to intervene, how she'd obeyed, and now the ghosts of that choice had returned. Her first officer entered quietly. "Captain, Admiral Kane is requesting a direct report." She straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. "Patch him through." The hologram of High Admiral Marcus Kane appeared, flickering amid the static. "Captain Ward," he said sharply, "I've received your report. You engaged and were attacked by Terran vessels?" Ilara nodded. "Confirmed, sir. We have full scans. The Phantom Armada includes stolen Dreadnoughts. Command structures suggest human leadership." Kane's jaw tightened. "Defectors," she hesitated. "Not just defectors, sir. Survivors. They were at Elysium. They think we abandoned them." The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Kane spoke quietly. "Perhaps we did." Ilara frowned. "Sir," Kane looked away. "When Elysium fell, Command couldn't risk revealing the full fleet's existence. We chose silence. We let them die to keep Nemesis hidden. Those soldiers, those people, they were left behind." Ilara felt her stomach turn. "You mean—" He nodded grimly. "The Phantom Armada isn't rebellion, Captain. It's justice twisted by betrayal," the revelation spread. Through the Vanguard like wildfire, every crew member who'd once believed humanity was righteous now felt the weight of guilt pressing on them. The war wasn't aliens versus humans anymore. It was truth versus denial. Her first officer approached her again. "Captain, if the Admiral knew, why not tell us?" Ilara stared out at the stars. "Because the truth breaks armies faster than war." Far away, in a hidden system deep within the void, Varric's fleet gathered. Thousands of stolen ships hovered in darkness, their hulls marked with both Terran and alien symbols, a union of rage and exile. Varric stood before them. "They think we're traitors," he said, voice echoing across every channel. "But we're the ones who saw the truth. Humanity's fire burned everything and left nothing but ashes." He raised his hand. "Now, we will burn them in return, not to conquer, but to make them remember what mercy looks like." The Phantom Armada began to move. In the Terran command chamber, Kane watched the incoming reports. Dozens of colonies under silent siege, outposts erased without a trace. Communications jammed. Admiral Reva Holt turned to him. "We can't fight them and hide the truth at the same time, Marcus." "The people will find out." Kane's face was carved with exhaustion. "If they do, the Terran Republic collapses." Reva leaned forward. "Maybe it should. Maybe it's time humanity remembers what we lost before we lose ourselves completely." Kane said nothing. He only stared at the map, at the lines of red spreading through Terran space. On the Vanguard, Ilara gathered her senior officers. "The Phantom Armada is human," she said. "They're not monsters. They're what we made them." Her second officer looked shocked. "You can't mean, are we supposed to negotiate with traitors?" Ilara shook her head. I'm saying they're not the enemy. They're a reflection. If we destroy them, we destroy what's left of our soul. The room fell silent. Finally, her engineer whispered, "Then what do we do, Captain?" Ilara looked out at the stars, the same stars that had seen Elysium burn. "We find them," she said, "and this time, we don't abandon them. In the darkness beyond the rim, two fleets prepared for the next move, one fueled by vengeance, the other by regret. And for the first time in generations, humanity faced not extinction, but itself. The war within had begun. The TSS Vanguard cut silently through the void. No battle horns, no fleet around it. Just one ship, alone, chasing ghosts. Captain Ilara Ward stood on the bridge, her gaze locked on the coordinates displayed before her. Elysium System, the place where everything began. The scanners showed the world below, a broken sphere of gray dust and molten scars. Elysium Prime, once humanity's jewel, was now nothing but ruin. Her first officer broke the silence. "Captain, this system's been quarantined for decades. No signals, no life signs. Are you sure they'll come here?" Ilara didn't look away. "I'm sure. Varick's not just fighting us. He's reminding us what we did." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Outside, the dead planet turned slowly beneath them. Its surface shimmered faintly, not from light, but from fragments of wreckage orbiting in a ghostly ring. A graveyard of ships. Ilara walked to the observation deck alone. Through the massive window, she could see the burned remains of Elysium. She remembered the first time she saw it. Years ago, oceans glowing under twin suns. Laughter in the air, hope everywhere. Now, all of it was gone. Her hand tightened into a fist. "I followed orders," she whispered to the silence. "And this is what those orders bought," a soft voice answered behind her. "And yet you came back." She turned sharply. It was Admiral Varick, projected as a hologram, his face illuminated by the faint light of the ruined world. "How did you get this channel?" she demanded. He smiled faintly. "You know me, Captain. I built these comm systems long before Command turned them against us." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "Why contact me?" "Why not just finish it?" Varick's tone softened. "Because I don't want to destroy you, Ilara. I want you to understand." She folded her arms. "Understand what? That you turned on your own people? That you're killing civilians?" He stepped closer, his holographic image flickering. "No, that we became what we feared most. You think you're saving humanity, but you're only repeating the same sins that burned this world." Ilara's jaw clenched. "We avenged it." Varick's voice darkened. "No, you erased it." The words struck her like a physical blow. He continued. "We saw the truth that day. Humanity didn't just fight the Zolari. It wiped them from existence. And every admiral, every captain, every one of you, let it happen." Ilara's voice cracked. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to see children die?" Varick stared at her. "You didn't stop it. None of you did. So now, we will." The transmission ended. Moments later, the Vanguard's sensors flared red. "Captain!" shouted the officer. "Multiple warp signatures! They're surrounding us!" On the main screen, ships appeared out of the void, hundreds of them. Human dreadnoughts, alien cruisers, all under Varick's command, the Phantom Armada. Ilara straightened her uniform. "All hands battle stations. Bring up shields!" Her first officer hesitated. "Captain, we can't win this fight." She gave a thin smile. "Who said we were here to win?" Outside, the void exploded with light as the Phantom Armada opened fire. Beams of energy tore across space, striking the Vanguard's shields. The deck shook violently. Sparks rained from the ceiling. "Shields at 40%!" the engineer shouted. Ilara gritted her teeth. "Hold position. Return fire!" The Dreadnoughts' cannons roared, blue-white beams slashing through the black. Several enemy ships disintegrated instantly, but for every one destroyed, 5 more replaced it. The crew fought with everything they had, but deep down, they all knew. This wasn't a battle they could win. Then, amid the chaos, a signal broke through. "Captain," the comms officer called. "Incoming transmission from the Phantom flagship." "It's Varick," Alara hesitated, then nodded. On screen. Varric appeared again, smoke and fire flickering around him. You can't save humanity with fear, Alara, he said. You're proving my point. Alara glared at him. And what about you? Killing your own kind? That's your redemption? Varric's voice rose. I'm not killing them. I'm freeing them. Every world you conquer becomes another Elysium. You just don't see it yet. She took a slow breath. You're wrong. We can still change. Varric shook his head. Not without sacrifice. Without sacrifice. Then he cut the channel. And every ship in his fleet powered its weapons. On the Vanguard's bridge, Alara made her choice. Engineering, she said. Divert power to the main core. Prep the self-destruct. Full yield, the engineer's eyes widened. Captain, that'll destroy the ship. She nodded. And them, if we're lucky. This is our fault. It ends here, with us. Her crew looked at her in silence. Finally, her first officer said softly, For Elysium? She met his eyes. For humanity. The Vanguard's reactor began to glow brighter, energy surging through its hull. Outside, Varric's ships closed in, unaware of what was coming. Alara whispered into the comms. Varric. You wanted to remind me what we became. So here's my answer. We're not monsters. Not yet. And with that, she gave the final command. Detonate. The void turned white. The explosion rippled across space, swallowing the Vanguard, the Phantom Armada, and the shattered remains of Elysium itself. For a moment, the galaxy went dark. Then, a new light spread through the system. A pulse that traveled faster than any signal, brighter than any star. A message, burned into the fabric of the void, forgive us. Hours later, in the command center on Earth, Admiral Kane received the last transmission from the Vanguard. He watched the final burst of light fade on the screen and whispered, She did it. Reva Holt stood beside him, eyes wet. At what cost? Kane sighed. At the cost of remembering who we are. Somewhere far beyond the stars, the ashes of Elysium drifted quietly in space. And from those ashes, tiny sparks glimmered, fragments of light, floating free. Perhaps it was debris, or perhaps something new beginning. The Elysium system was silent once more. No fleets, no war. Only the dust of worlds and the quiet hum of space. Where once there had been fury and vengeance, there was now only stillness and light. 3 days after the explosion, the Terran long-range scanner array picked up something strange. A faint energy signature, gentle, rhythmic, pulsing like a heartbeat. Technicians stared at the readings in disbelief. It's coming from Elysium's remains, one said. But that's impossible. Nothing could have survived that blast. The signal grew stronger. Then, a voice crackled through the static. This is the Vanguard. Repeat! The Vanguard! Survivors. Holding position. The control room erupted in shock. Within minutes, Admiral Marcus Kane was called to the command deck. He stared at the signal on the screen, disbelief etched into his weathered face. Alara, he whispered. You're alive? Far away, on what little remained of Elysium's orbit, the TSS Vanguard drifted like a wounded beast. Half its hull was gone. Systems flickered weakly. But the heart of the ship, its reactor, still glowed faintly. Inside, Captain Alara Ward sat at the center of the darkened bridge. Her uniform was scorched. Her voice was hoarse, but she was alive. Around her, a handful of crew members worked to restore power. Communications online, Captain, said her first officer weakly. We're broadcasting on all Terran frequencies. Alara nodded slowly. Good. Let them know. We're still here. She looked out at the debris field, fragments of Terran and Phantom ships scattered across the black. Somewhere out there, among the twisted metal, she thought she saw movement, a faint glow. Hours later, rescue fleets arrived. The Terran 9th Expeditionary Group deployed hundreds of shuttles to recover survivors. When the first transport docked with the Vanguard, Admiral Kane himself boarded. The airlock hissed open. He stepped into the ruined bridge, his boots crunching over broken glass and debris. Alara turned from the viewport, exhaustion in her eyes. Kane's voice was quiet. "You did it," she managed a faint smile. "No, Admiral. We just stopped the bleeding." He looked around at the wreckage. "And Varric?" Her smile faded. "Gone, but not destroyed." He frowned. "Explain." Alara gestured to the glowing fragments outside. When the cores detonated, the energy merged with the planet's remains. It changed something. The scans show biological matter cells within the debris. Varric's fleet might not be dead, just transformed. Kane's brow furrowed. "Transformed into what?" Alara stared into the light beyond the viewport. "I don't know, but it feels alive." Over the next weeks, scientists studied the Elysium remnant, the strange nebula of light born from the explosion. They found particles that responded to Terran neural frequencies as if listening. They called it Project Aurora. But to the soldiers who had survived the war, it was something simpler. It was hope. Months passed. The Terran Republic changed. No longer did they rule through fear. The great dreadnought fleets were dismantled, piece by piece. The weapons that had burned worlds were stored away, not forgotten, but never again to be used. When the Council gathered for the first Galactic Accord, Admiral Kane stood before them. His voice was steady, his eyes tired but proud. "We were the fire that once burned the stars," he said. "Now we must be their light. The galaxy does not need another war. It needs memory, so it never repeats ours." And for the first time, every major species agreed. The accord was signed. Peace returned. On the edge of known space, in a quiet observation station, Captain Alara Ward sat alone, watching the glow of Elysium through her viewport. It had changed since the day of the explosion. The light had grown softer, pulsing like a living star. Her comm buzzed softly. It was a private transmission, unmarked, untraceable. She hesitated, then answered. The voice that came through was faint, almost a whisper. "You kept your promise." Her heart stopped. "Varric? We're not what we were," the voice said. "We're something new. The fire's gone, Alara, but the light remains." Then the signal faded. She stared at the stars for a long moment. "Goodbye," she whispered, "and thank you." Years later, historians would say the Battle of Elysium ended the last great galactic war. But the truth was deeper. It ended something far older, humanity's need to prove its power. The Terran Republic evolved. Colonies flourished again, not under command, but cooperation. The words "never again" were engraved on every academy wall, and in orbit of the glowing Elysium remnant, a small station was built. It was not a fortress. It was a sanctuary. They named it the Light of Elysium. Every ship, human or alien, that passed through Terran space would slow down when they saw it. A gentle beacon shining across the stars. A reminder that humanity could destroy. But it could also rebuild. On the station's upper deck, Alara stood in quiet reflection. Her hair was silver now, her uniform replaced by simple civilian clothes. Children of every race ran down the hallways, laughing. She smiled softly when one of them, a small Kalari girl, tugged on her sleeve and asked, "Miss, is it true you saw the last war?" Alara looked out at the glowing nebula. "Yes," she said, "and I also saw the first peace." The child smiled and ran off. Alara turned back to the window one last time. The light of Elysium shimmered, brighter than ever. She whispered into the stars. For Elysium, for humanity, for all of us. And somewhere, far beyond her sight, the faint echo of Varric's voice replied, "The fire never dies." The stars glowed a little brighter, and so ended the tale of vengeance, sacrifice and rebirth, the story of humanity's fall and the light it left behind. Humanity's fall and the light it left behind.